so let's test out our constructors. So I'm going to open up person. So now we open up person. OK, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add some private variables. So we'll add private string first name, private string last name. OK, so I want to be able to set these, since these are items that need to be set all the time. I want to be able to set these. The first thing I want to be able to do is I want to be able to get them back. So I'm going to do public with a return type of a string, get first name, and we're going to return the first name with a lowercase n in this case. And we're going to do the same thing for last name. And we're going to do the same thing for last name. And we're going to write last name over here. OK, so now we have our getter methods for first name and last name. So now I'm looking at the constructor that we have over here. The way as a reminder, the way you know it's a constructor is it doesn't have a return type and it has the same name as the class. So we want to write a constructor that's able to make a person with a name. So we could either start out in here, or we can make a new constructor. We're going to overload the constructor. So we're going to do public person, this time with two parameters. We're going to have a string called fname and a string called lname. OK, so we're going to set when a person makes a new person, we're going to make the first name equal to fname and the last name equal to lname. So that's first name is our private variable, our string. Last name is our private variable, our instance variable, our string. Fname is the parameter, which is the local variable. And lname is the parameter, which is the local variable. We have the ability to get the first name and get the last name. And we also probably should have the ability to set the first name and last name as well. And these aren't going to return anything. And so we're going to have this as first name equals fname. And we're going to make a string fname over here. So what we're doing is we're sending in a parameter called fname, which is different than the fname in the constructor. Both of these are local variables, meaning they only exist between the brackets. So they're very specific, a very specific location. So you have to remake them each time. So we're going to make a string called fname. We're going to make first name equal to fname. And so when we make this, when we set the name, we're going to change the private variable first name. We're going to do the same thing for last name. And we're going to write this as last name. We're going to change this to last name. Now, it doesn't actually matter what the name of the variable is. So we really could leave it as fname and fname because it just exists as the parameter. It's only going to exist within here. So it doesn't actually matter what it's called. But for our own internal consistency and so that we remember what things are, so I'm going to change it to lname. So last name, which is the instance variable, again, equals lname. And there we go. So let's move on to our next section. Let's make it look a little bit nicer. And OK, so let's make a person. So now let's compile our code. And our code does not compile. So let's see why is it not compiling. Because I tried to return a method called first name. And I tried to do the same thing over here. I did last first name, and when I meant to do last name, and we'll compile it, and it compiles just fine. So now we'll compile the whole thing, the whole package. So now we're going to right-click, make a new student. The student is going to be called Bob, and now we have a new student called Bob. When I go to look and see what the name is, when I inspect Bob, Bob does have a first name and a last name, but they're both private. They're coming originally from person. Student does not yet have a first name and last name, I believe. And we see that they're null. So now let's make a person instead. We're going to make a new person with our new constructor that does string fname and string lname. And that we're going to call Bob2. Bob Bernard is the person that we're making. And when I right-click, I can get the first name, which will return, in our case, Bob. I can inspect the entire item, which in this case is going to have a private string first name called Bob, a private string last name called Bernard. Next, we're going to go through how methods inherit from each other.